Put some hot sauce on my burrito, baby. You know you look good to me. Oh, that's good. Put some hot sauce on my burrito, baby. Baby, you know you look good to me. Oh, that's good.
Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Anne Reardon and this is another episode of Debunking. In this first hack we are looking at the bizarre trend of using excessive amounts of cleaning products to clean the toilet. They tip so many products in there that they can't even flush the toilet without sticking their hand in to unblock it. Cleaning chemicals are expensive, so they're just flushing money down the toilet. Apart from it being such a waste of money and bad for the environment to use all those chemicals unnecessarily, the main issue I have with this is they are mixing different chemicals together, and when you do that, they can react together and create toxic gases. You don't have to look very far to know that this is a bad idea.
A mixture of cleaning products caused overwhelming toxic fumes that killed the manager of a Buffalo Wild Wings and sent 13 others to the hospital.
Don't mix cleaning chemicals together. It's a really dangerous idea. Next, we have a DIY jewelry hack by 5 Minute Crafts.
We were just talking about the current
dip their
situation.
finger in melted wax to get a thick coating. Then they saw off a section of wax to make a ring shape. They then trace a pattern onto it and carve out a flower shape into the top of the ring. Now, some jewelers do indeed use wax to carve out designs when they're designing new pieces of jewelry, but it's a specific type of wax. It's very hard so that it will hold its shape. And if we look at the website for the jeweler's wax, we can see that it has a melting point of around 240 degrees Celsius or 460 Fahrenheit. You could not dip your finger into that or you're going to end up with really, really bad burns. And that's why the jeweler's wax comes already available in shapes that jewelers can use. So you've got your long cylinders for the rings and the ones that are fatter at the top for the signet type rings. But that's not what they used in this video. So they must have used a wax with a much lower melting point, something like a paraffin wax melts at about 60 degrees Celsius. You may have seen that in the shops that do the wax hands, and usually they'll dip the hand into ice first to make it really cold and then into the wax repeatedly to get a layer of the wax to be able to get a shape. But that wax is really, really soft, so they then fill that with a different type of wax that is firmer before they give it to the person, or it's just going to crush. You couldn't use it for carving these sort of fine details that they're showing in this video. If we keep watching the video, you can see that it then changes when they're carving the flower shape to suddenly look like a plastic shape, not wax at all. And looking at it side on now, how do they think they got from this shape to this shape? Instead of carving wax, jewelers can also 3D print. There's certain 3D printing materials that will melt at the same temperature as the wax does, so they can use it in this process. So what they do is they take either the wax or the 3D printed thing and put it into a mold, adding gypsum all around it, and then they heat that up so that the wax melts out and you're left with the mold that you want for your metal. You then fill it with your molten metal, put it into water, and that gypsum just sort of dissolves away like chalk, and then you end up with the piece of metal in the shape of what you'd carved originally. So the second half of what they showed in that process was correct. It was the first half that was totally incorrect, and mixing the truth in with the lies there makes it harder for people to distinguish, because it makes it all seem like it must be true and it must be believable even when it's not. So why did they make up a fake beginning? Why didn't they just show it 3D printing rather than showing someone dipping their hand in wax? Well, I think it's because this thumbnail showing someone dipping their hand into wax looks far more DIY and achievable and doable than this thumbnail would have. The truth is just not as clickable, and the current YouTube algorithm really favours things that have a high click-through rate. If we look at one of the most successful creators on YouTube, Mr. Beast, you can learn from the way that he does his thumbnails. If you look at this one, the title says walking into random stores with 100 dinosaurs. But if you watch the video, there's only about 10 or 11 dinosaurs and they didn't even go into a store.
We didn't even get in the door, we got kicked out.
But that title would just not be as clickable, and it certainly wouldn't have got 31 million views. If you look at this next one, it says, I didn't eat food for 30 days. And the thumbnail says, day 19. But if you watch the video, he only made it to day 14. And if we swap out those numbers, again, it's just not as clickable as it was before. Still not recommended from a health perspective. Please do not just stop eating for 2 weeks. I would not recommend that you do that or follow that video at all. But you get the idea. YouTubers are having to do more and more clickbait in order to get that high click-through rate and please the algorithm and get recommended. That's something I am not very good at, but unfortunately something we all have to consider.
You're here.
Mel sent me this next video where they tell you to wrap string around a bottle, add alcohol, light it up, dump it in water, and now you have a green bracelet. This is totally ridiculous. If you use string and alcohol and heat to break glass, you end up with really roughly broken glass. If you put that on your arm, it is going to cut you. Even if we look back at their original video, you can see that theirs is jagged, thick glass. And then in the next shot, it is perfectly smooth and thin and probably a plastic bracelet bought from a shop. Effie sent me this next video asking, is this true or has it been faked? The lady takes a very wilted lettuce and puts it in leaf side down into some iced water and leaves it overnight. And then in the morning,
it's just like new.
Let's test it out. I've got a couple of wilted lettuces. This one is pretty good in the middle, but the edges are looking a little bit sad. And I've got this one here, which is really quite wilted. Again, the middle is still okay, but the outside leaves are really not great. Let's put both of those into iced water in the same way the lady did, and then leave it on a time lapse overnight so we can see what happens. There is a tiny change in the first hour, but then after that, nothing happens at all. It would have made more sense to me if she trimmed a tiny bit off the stem of the lettuce and flipped it over so that it's stem side down so it can draw up water the way it does when it's growing, like with flowers in a vase. So let's flip it over and leave it overnight again and see what happens. Wow, that's making much more of an impact. That's pretty cool to watch. It's rehydrating before your eyes. They look much, much better now. But for food safety reasons, I would say do not do this hack. If you think about it, a lettuce grows in soil and it's then picked and it goes along a production line and it is then packaged. There are lots of places along that line that it could be contaminated on those outside leaves with some listeria or some E. coli or other bacterias. And then what happens when you get it and you submerge it in water, you are giving it plenty of water for that bacteria to multiply and also to go from just the outer leaves into the water. You're then putting the lettuce into the water and the lettuce is drawing up that water and any of that bacteria into the actual lettuce leaves, which you're then going to eat. So that is really not a good idea. It is not a safe hack, so don't do that one. Next we have a baking hack.
Adding foil to the tops of your tins really helps with an even bake. They come out nice and fluffy, perfectly flat on top. It saves any wastage from having to trim off any uneven or crunchy tops.
Sounds awesome? Let's test it out. Now some cakes are more prone to doming on the top than others, so I've chosen a cake mix that looks like it domes pretty badly. I've made up 2 boxes of cake mix and put the exact same quantity of batter into each tin. We'll cover one tightly with foil and leave the other one uncovered and bake those. Cakes dome because the outside edges near the metal tin bake and harden before the cake is finished rising, which then forces the cake to rise in the middle where it's softer on top. Wow, this one's gone really crazy. If we take the foil off the other one, you can see that it has hit the foil, which has stopped it going quite as mad. But if we look at them side by side, the one covered in foil is definitely better, but it's still going to need trimming if you want to use it for a flat layer for a cake. So let's try that again with a different cake recipe. This one I'm going to use one that has a much runnier batter. You can see it is rising slightly more evenly. It hasn't gone totally crazy like the other one did, but we still get that dome on top. If we take the foil off this one, you can see it's not as brown because the foil has protected it from the heat. And if we tip those out and look at them side by side, you can see the one that didn't have the foil obviously is still domed and has quite a bit of browning. The other one, to me, still looks just as domed. So will this hack give you totally flat cakes? No, it probably won't. The recipe makes far more of an impact. The other things that can make a difference is baking it on a lower temperature at the start of your baking, so it has a chance for the whole thing to heat up and rise before that top sets, and also using the wet cake strips around your tin so it's cooling the edges and giving the middle a chance to heat up. They're the two ways that would be more effective at getting a flat cake, but the recipe is going to be the thing that makes the biggest difference in there too. Next, a reminder to parents that if young kids are watching YouTube, to not only keep an eye on what they're watching, but if they've got headphones on, make sure you take a listen as well. After I mentioned this in a previous video, one of my patrons said he did just that when he walked past his niece who was watching videos. He had a listen and was quite shocked to what was actually being said. To give you an example, if you were seeing a kid with headphones on watching this video, what would you expect they would be listening to? Maybe some music, maybe how-to instructions, but no, they would actually be listening to a story. I won't play the whole thing here, but just to give you an idea of the voice it's told in.
One night, Audie was staying with her mother and sister after she got in a fight with her baby father. Audie's sister had woken up to some loud screaming.
It continues on to tell a dramatized type version of a real crime that was very disturbing and quite horrific that happened many years ago. Definitely not something you want little kids listening to. And there are more and more of these story time videos that seem to be cropping up. They've either got cake decorating or puppies and kittens and stuff that would be attractive to little kids to watch, but then they have a story being told in the background. This slime video has a story about a young girl hitchhiking at night.
Someone stopped just a couple of meters away and casually asked,
"Where are you heading, girl?"
After my eyes had gotten used to the light, I managed to make out the face of a smiling man. I really didn't have any choice. Staying alone at night on an unfamiliar highway would have been a much crazier idea than getting into a car with a stranger. So I told him my address and I trusted fate.
Never get into a car with a stranger. Even if you're completely lost in the middle of nowhere, you wouldn't get into the car with them. You would ask them to call your parents, and if you don't know your parents' phone number, you would ask them to call the police, and the police would come and get you and take you to your home. It's never the resort to get in the car with a stranger. You just don't do that sort of thing. But the other thing that concerned me about this video is it kept flashing up this short link all the way through the video and all the way through the story. So I decided to follow it and see where the short link went. At first it looks like it's just taken you to a page with more slime videos. But if you try and click on any of those videos, it says that the link is not working, but it instantly takes you through to the App Store to download a Chinese video sharing app. To use the app, you have to give it permission to use your camera, your photo album, your location, and anything you copy to the clipboard, including passwords. Although it says you have to be over 17 to use the app, it didn't ask for my age for me to install it or start using it at all. If I did want to share a video which is shared publicly with my location on it, it did ask for a phone number. So at least hopefully that would rule out too many young kids just sharing publicly videos of themselves with their location, which just seems kind of dodgy that it's in the kids' video and linking them directly through to that. If you see anything you want me to debunk, you can send me a link to the video using the...
Put some hot sauce on my burrito, baby. You know you look good to me. Oh, that look good.
Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Anne Reardon and this is another episode of Debunking. In this first hack we are looking at the bizarre trend of using excessive amounts of cleaning products to clean the toilet. They tip so many products.
Twitch has been dealing with problems for a really long time, but those problems just seem to be getting worse and worse. And today I want to talk about a bit of a history with the problems Twitch is having, the current problems they're having, but also my experiences with those problems on Twitch. But before we start this video, I did notice you admiring my beautiful t-shirt. Did you know you can have your own version for only $25? And there's other t-shirt designs already there, with more coming between now and Christmas. The link is going to be down below. Click it. Merchland.net/boogie2988. Though your shirt will be free of dandruff and Cheeto dust. If you're a Redditor or a YouTuber that likes drama, chances are you're familiar with the subreddit Livestream Fails. And they have done a very good job of not just documenting drama that happens on live stream, but that surrounds live streamers as well. It's been pretty interesting watching it recently. And if you're not a Twitch fan and you exclusively stay on YouTube, I can explain it to you what's going on very easily. Do you remember back in 2018 when YouTubers turned against each other and everybody was like fighting and infighting? And we still see some of that today, like with Ethan and Keemstar. That's pretty much what's happening over there on Twitch. Allegations and infighting and people picking sides and drama. It's drama. Probably no big surprise that one of the biggest farmers of drama on YouTube is also one of the biggest farmers of drama on Twitch now. But personal feelings aside, let's talk about what else is going on with Twitch. Regardless of all of this drama, Twitch has made the dumbest decision I think they've ever made in Twitch history, which is giving its largest creators a huge pay cut. Smaller creators like me on Twitch earned a 50-50 split. If you spent $10, I got half and Twitch got half. But the highest tier creators, they were getting a special privileged 70-30 split because they brought in the most money. They would keep 70% and Twitch would only keep 30%, which I think anyone with a brain would realize that they should probably bring that split to everyone. I mean, if you're doing the live streaming, if you're doing the content creation, you probably deserve the lion's share. I mean, YouTube, since its creation of channel memberships, has given a 70-30 split. So it only makes sense that Twitch would join that, considering YouTube is becoming a real competition now.
Did you also know that I have channel memberships turned on, and you can become a channel member by clicking that button right down there below, and for every dollar you spend, I'll get 70 cents of it. Isn't that a really cool deal? You should do it.
But according to this latest blog post by Twitch, they've decided to not bring smaller creators up to the 70-30 split, but instead bring down the largest creators to the 50-50 split, ultimately paying the most watched people on their platform less, incentivizing them to stream less, or incentivizing them to move to other platforms like YouTube that have a better revenue share. And look, when it comes to Twitch's biggest affiliates, they can afford whatever financial hit that they are going to be taking here. Most of these people are earning millions of dollars a year. So if they earn, I don't know, instead of 5 million, 4 million, they're probably going to be just fine. They don't need to buy that extra yacht this year. So my heart doesn't bleed too much for that. But as far as Twitch is concerned, it is a bad business decision, because this is, you don't take your best performing people and cut their pay and expect for your company's money problems to fix themselves. That's absolutely not how that works. That's absolutely not how that's going to work. The way that mega corporations like this normally stay afloat is by spending money. And keep in mind, Twitch is owned by Amazon, a company worth $1.2 trillion. They can afford whatever amount that they were paying creators beforehand. They just decided not to do it. I mean, that's Amazon's motto, right? Pay as little as possible, get the most work done, keep the most money in your own pocket as possible. I get that. But it just doesn't look well when you're doing that to creators like Hassan. And keep in mind, recently Twitch made a huge change that allows its creators to stream on other platforms like Facebook Gaming, YouTube, and Twitch, and everywhere else. So there's very little incentive for them to not move to YouTube. where I think a lot of the biggest names whose audience will move with them will probably consider doing that. Now, I'm no sports guy, but I'm going to try to come up with a sports analogy that explains what this is like. This is like punting when you're 5 runs behind and you need to get a couple more baskets for the wicket. The point I'm making is they're giving the keys to the kingdom over to the competition. Why? I don't know. But it's something they've decided to do. And when you look at all the controversies that have happened over the years for Twitch, not just drama, not just infighting, but huge bad business decisions and unfair bans and choosing the wrong sides and creator versus creator drama and unfair practices. Just there's so much wrong with Twitch that this seems like such a stupid move. It's definitely not going to play out the way whatever CEO that made this decision thinks it will play out. I promise you that. When you look at the numbers though, I mean, Twitch is still the king of live streaming, and it'll probably stay that way for a considerable while longer. They have 3 million people streaming on the platform every month. Compare that to YouTube with only 700,000 live streamers each month. But that could definitely change very quickly, and YouTube is in a place where I think they want to make that happen. Especially when you look at your smallest creators and they want to make more of the money that they generate, and you're like, hey, fuck you. And then you look at your largest creators who want to keep the money they're currently generating, and you say, fuck you too, and fuck you, and eat shit, and go die, and go fuck yourselves. I mean, as for me, I still stream on Twitch like once every couple of weeks, but I'm incentivized to do it on YouTube instead because I make more money here, I get more viewers here. It only makes sense to move to YouTube, and the only reason I haven't done it is because I feel loyal to the Twitch platform to some degree, and mostly because I feel loyal to the people that have supported me there throughout the years, and I don't want to give up on them. I have that loyalty. But do you think all of these large creators do? Especially when it means the difference of millions of dollars? I mean, loyalty only costs so much. And that's not even the biggest issue that I think Twitch is facing here. Because at the end of the day, the top 500 creators are going to earn 29% less after they've earned $100,000 for the year. And I mean, cry me a river on your pile of money there. Nobody really cares about that. But as this Twitter post also points out, they are also saying that they cannot afford to continue to run the service, which sounds like a bullshit excuse. But if it's not a bullshit excuse, if that's really the case, and YouTube can't afford it, then it sounds like Twitch could go completely out of business. The good news is, I think the reality of it is, Amazon owns these servers. Jeff Bezos can afford to go to Mars. He can afford to do anything. They just don't want to. They want to make a profit. That's what it comes down to. This is not a company that he's comfortable being a loss leader. He wants to make money doing it. I mean, Jeff Bezos or Amazon or any other corporation in America, they're not altruistic. They're in it to make money, and it makes sense that they think this is going to maximize their profit. I just don't think it's going to work out the way they think it will, but I'm curious as to what you think. So let me know in the comments section below. If I haven't shilled hard enough in this video yet, consider becoming...
As if the NVIDIA terrible news couldn't get any worse. Some of you may have heard about this, some of you may not have. I think it's an important discussion to talk about. We're going to talk about the new ATX 3.0 spec for power supplies and the issues of running an older power supply on a new 40 series graphics card with adapters, and the fact that there's literally a potentially risk of fire here. Yeah, the bad news just kind of keeps coming. The new H7 series from NZXT offers tempered glass side panels, toolless panel removal for easy installation, front and top side 360mm radiator support, and integrated cable management bar for clean cable installs. To see the complete feature set and variations of the H7 available, including the H7 Flow, follow the link in the description below. Okay, I really need you to do me a favor and try and follow along. You might even have to watch this more than once, and definitely check out, Steve did some really deep dive coverage on this a few days back, and I think it's important that we talk about this and get it widespread, especially if you're considering purchasing a 40 series graphics card and you're not planning on upgrading your power supply. And there's a very big reason why I feel like you should upgrade your power supply if you're gonna be using 4090, 4080, whatever. Definitely 4090. But there's like 4 major things we have to talk about here. So it's essentially a fork of problems or potential problems. This is what happens when you have a kind of a revolution of something evolving into a next generation. And I'm not just talking about the graphics cards, I'm now talking specifically about power supplies. This right here is a 12 volt high power adapter that came with our 3090 Ti. So here it is right here. This is the EVGA For the Win 3. It has the new plug on there. It's very similar to what you would see on the Founders Edition cards. However, I tried to stick this in one of the Founders Edition cards and it actually doesn't go. The keys are different. So this is essentially the same 12 volt high power plug that you would see coming as an adapter with 40 series, only it's got one less 8-pin plug on it. Zotac showed their adapter and it has 4 of them, which makes sense because if the 4090 is able to draw up to 600 watts and the ATX 2.0 an 8-pin spec for PCI Express is 150 watts per plug, then that makes sense. 150 times 4 is 600. So this right here obviously would not be a good adapter to use on a 40 series card, but here's the problem. There's a pin, there's a sideband missing on here. It's another little plug that's on the bottom and it contains 4 data pins. The ATX 3.0 spec, which is the newest power supply designed specifically for going along with the launch of 40 series, I don't know which came first, actually. I'm pretty sure the power supply spec came first because that's what the cards had to utilize, right? Those 4 pins provide very important information to the graphics card from the power supply saying, 1, when it's plugged in, it's like, here's how big of a power supply we are. Hey, graphics card, just so you know, I'm only a 600 watt. So if you're gonna try and pull 600 watts on your own, that's not gonna work. So what would happen is the graphics card would be able to respond back to the power supply and basically they have a communication that says, okay, here's how much power we can safely provide to you. That's only available on the ATX 3.0 power supplies. That does not exist on a 2.0 power supply with an adapter. So the old days of like having a graphics card pull so much power that it starts to damage cables like we saw back at the Molex era when you were having Molex. Remember, graphics cards used to use a Molex plug. And then we had the revolution to the PCI Express plug, and then every graphics card came with Molex to PCI Express adapters. We saw all this happen back then, actually. It's been that long, it's like 15 years or more since we've seen that. In fact, I think up until just a few years ago, some graphics card companies were still sending the Molex adapter to the PCI Express with their graphics cards. And I've said in all my videos, don't use this, get a new power supply. That was just because of power draw. Now we're talking about actual data communication because the nice thing about ATX 3.0 is the fact that those pins communicating with the graphics card can actually, the graphics card can kind of lower its expectations of what it's capable of doing if the power supply is not spec'd high enough. Now, if a power supply is 450 watts or higher and it's ATX 3.0, it has to have the 12 volt power plug, the 12 volt high power plug. And the reason for that is the reason that I just said, is it has to communicate with the graphics card. If it's you may not see an ATX 3.0 under 450, there's no point because it really has to do with this plug. The other issue here is the fact that the adapter itself is designed to be working with graphics cards that are not, or excuse me, power supplies that are not ATX 3.0 certified. So what you get here is just like this adapter, and we'll show you a close-up of it, it doesn't have the sideband plug. Interestingly enough, my 3090 Ti does have the sideband plug on there with the pins, only it doesn't go to anywhere because this is not an ATX 3.0 graphics card, as far as I know. I actually kind of want to plug it in with an ATX 3.0 once we get power supply in to see what happens. Because funny enough, I've had a lot of PSU manufacturers reaching out to me saying, hey, we're gonna be selling and or providing, I don't know if they're selling or giving for free, an adapter that doesn't look like this. It just goes from the 12 volt high power plug to like a 16-inch long plug that terminates to their power supply connectors and it plugs in so you have a single cable without it being an ugly adapter. But the problem with those adapter cables, or even this guy here, is you are now taking a dumb power supply. No, I'm not talking about digital power and all, I mean dumb. It doesn't communicate directly any sort of data with the graphics card to the graphics card. The graphics card is gonna by default now want to just pull as much power as it possibly can. Because here's the thing, with the data going back and forth, the graphics card can pull up to over 350 watts on boot if the power supply is big enough. So let's say you had a 1000 watt ATX 3.0 power supply with a PCIe Gen 5 plug going into it, the graphics card just goes like almost full load on boot up. Why? I don't know, but it can. And here's the thing, if it pulls that kind of power on startup with an adapter, and your power supply is not smart enough to be able to, like depending on the rail design, you have all these plugs. Let's say you have a dual rail power supply and for whatever reason, and I hope that nobody does this, you take 2 of your PCI Express cables with pigtails, and you just pigtail into them, all 4 of them, you could now potentially have up to 600 watts being pulled from a single rail on your power supply. Or let's say you split them between the rails. That's not necessarily a problem either, but now the power supply is not smart enough to really know exactly what it's powering, because typically you would split on the rails different like power supply or different graphics cards or different whatever. They've had in testing, they've seen extreme amounts over 150 watts being drawn by a single cable, the one cable going to, because there's no smart divide of how the power is being distributed. Now, you could go really deep on power supply design, Johnny Guru levels and stuff. I don't do that here, but I'm telling you right now, the other issue here is the fact that, and now all this sounds so far like, okay, Jay, what you're saying doesn't really sound like an NVIDIA problem. It's an NVIDIA problem in the sense that all the 40 series graphics cards are gonna be requiring this plug. At least the 4080 and up, the 4012 gig and up that we know of. Whether or not they're gonna still be using it on the lower power supplies may not be as much of an issue because of the fact that, or the lower graphics cards, may not be as much of an issue because of the fact that they theoretically won't be drawing anywhere near this amount of power. Because see, the problem is, in only a few years, we went from 250 watt graphics cards up to 500. And so that's pretty insane. And in fact, up to, I believe, 600 watts capable on the 3090 Ti when overclocking. The other issue here is the life cycle of the plug itself. And my eyes starting to twitch as I think about this. This plug right here is rated 30 cycles. That means every time you plug it in and unplug it, that's a cycle. Now, most people do not plug in, unplug, unplug, plug in, unplug, unplug, unplug. They're like a fidget toy, their graphics card. But I can tell you right now, just in the amount of testing that I've been doing this last week preparing for 40 series, this has already gone through about, oh, I don't know, 10 cycles. And that doesn't include how many times I plugged it in and unplugged it. Because here's the problem. I was looking at this going, this is such a weird little plug. And I was like practicing.
There's a limited amount of stuff you can do in Wake. Don't worry, that's normal. Oh man, that's not like a new deal. I might have to go soon because I am in a Halaton run.
How's it going, boy?
Yeah, like Argos is actually a pretty dumb like boss. It's actually more efficient to buy a bus than do the content if you're 1370.
Yep.
Content in the game that's actually like that, dude.
It's because you get a lot more gold from just doing or from this than if like you can buy a bus and still make gold. So it's pretty pretty weird. But
I can feel the pull of evil covetousness.
I just got two 1500 people in this party carrying me, so it's nice. Or bussing me. I don't know how to say it.
my god, don't ask me.
Is it worth it to buy the bonus chest? Probably not, no? So yeah? Yeah.
Show you my power.
That's gonna be me. Oh, is there normal then 2 hards at the end? Like for gate 2 and 3? Be up to bully. that. What's up?
Doing some vaulting.
Nice.
Yo, Boba, can you come to LA?
No.
Why?
Weather does not be nice.
I need someone to
Hot,
eat.
humid.
I need someone to eat all this cake for me.
Oh, and happy birthday.
Thanks. Well, now I'm just getting older.
You've got me.
Hey, are you playing Lost Ark?
Yeah, I'm doing vaulting.
Oh, nice. Are you on the other account?
No, I'm on the Wardancer.
Oh, I see.